Montana Territory, 1878. The wide-open skies that promised freedom had turned treacherous as the howling winds stirred dust into a blinding fury across the plains. Mitchell Kearney tightened his grip on the reins, his 24-year-old hands already calloused from years of ranch work. He believed in three things: hard work, self-reliance, and the unforgiving nature of the frontier. Love was a luxury men like him couldn't afford, not when survival demanded everything. "You cannot tame the West, and you cannot tame your heart," his father had told him before consumption claimed him 2 winters past. Choose which master to serve wisely. Mitchell had chosen the land, convinced that attachment only bred weakness. The unmarked graves dotting the territory stood as silent testimony to his conviction. The wind shrieked as it bent the prairie grass horizontal. His horse, Comet, nickered nervously beneath him. They needed shelter before the storm worsened. Mitchell pulled his bandana higher over his nose and squinted through dust-caked eyelashes. Something unexpected caught his eye, the outline of a small wagon, its canvas cover whipping violently in the wind, stranded and vulnerable on the open plain. "Damn fool traveling in this weather," he muttered, ready to ride past. It wasn't his business. Survival out here meant minding your own troubles. Then he spotted movement, a slight figure struggling against the wind, attempting to calm a panicked horse that threatened to break free of its harness. Something about the desperate determination in that small silhouette made Mitchell's jaw clench. With a curse that the wind swallowed, he turned Comet toward the wagon. As he approached, the dust parted momentarily, revealing a young woman with golden blonde hair now matted with dirt. Her blue calico dress, once proper, was now torn and filthy as she fought to control her frightened horse. She couldn't be more than 20, Mitchell guessed, too young and too alone for this unforgiving terrain. "Miss," he called out, his voice barely carrying over the roar of the storm, "you need to abandon the wagon. Storm's getting worse." The woman turned, revealing a face that, despite being streaked with dirt and fear, possessed a beauty that momentarily stunned Mitchell. Her eyes, bright blue even through the dust, widened at the sight of him. "I cannot leave," she shouted back. "Everything I own is here." Mitchell dismounted in one fluid motion, pulling his hat lower to shield his eyes. "Your possessions won't matter if you're dead." He reached her side, noting how small she appeared up close. Her hands were bleeding from rope burns where she'd tried to hold the horse. "Name's Mitchell Kearney. I have shelter not far from here." "Zara Dawson," she responded, coughing as dust filled her lungs. "My father's homestead is just beyond the ridge, if we could." "No time," Mitchell interrupted, glancing at the darkening sky. "That's a dust wall coming. We'll never make it." He worked quickly to unhitch her horse, securing the animal to his own mount. "Grab what you cannot live without. You have 1 minute." Zara hesitated only briefly before diving into the wagon. She emerged clutching a small wooden box and a leather satchel. Mitchell didn't ask questions. Every person carried their precious things out here. Instead, he helped her onto his horse before mounting behind her. "Hold tight," he instructed, one arm securing her waist as he turned Comet toward the small line Shacky'd been heading for when he spotted her. The dust wall was nearly upon them, a towering cloud of suffocating earth that could bury the unwary. As they rode, Zara's body tensed against his. Mitchell tried to ignore the unfamiliar feeling of a woman pressed against him. 3 years alone on the frontier had hardened him to most discomforts, but this strange awareness, was something his isolation hadn't prepared him for. They reached the line shack just as visibility disappeared completely. Mitchell dismounted first, then reached up to help Zara down. Her slight weight fell against him for a moment, and he felt her trembling, from fear or cold he couldn't tell. "Inside," he directed, leading the horses to the Linta shelter attached to the cabin. Once the animals were secure, he followed her into the single-room structure. The shack was sparse but solid, a stone fireplace, a small table with 2 chairs, a narrow bed in the corner, and shelves stocked with basic supplies. Mitchell moved immediately to the fireplace, his fingers working automatically to kindle a flame as Zara stood awkwardly in the center of the room. "You can set your things down," he said without looking up. "Storm might last till morning." Zara placed her wooden box carefully on the table. "Thank you for saving me, Mr. Kearney. I fear I would have perished out there." Her voice carried an educated tone that marked her as not from these parts. Mitchell merely nodded, uncomfortable with gratitude. Anyone would have done the same. "No," she said with surprising firmness. "They would not. I have learned that much about the territory in my short time here. She removed her bonnet, revealing the full glory of her hair, golden waves that fell past her shoulders despite being tousled by the wind. Mitchell found himself staring and quickly turned back to the fire. "How old are you, Miss Dawson, and what brings you out here alone?" "I am 19, she answered, beginning to brush dust from her dress. "And I was not traveling alone by choice. My father and I came west to claim land through the Homestead Act. He died 3 months ago, fever." Her voice faltered slightly. "I was returning from Blackwater, where I sold some of our belongings for supplies." Mitchell felt a familiar pang. The frontier collected the unprepared like a grim reaper with its harvest. "I am sorry for your loss," he offered stiffly, unsure how to comfort someone when he'd spent so long avoiding such connections. "The land is ours, mine now. I intend to keep it," Zara continued, lifting her chin with determination that seemed too large for her delicate features. "I promised my father." Mitchell stood, his full height making the small cabin seem even smaller. At 24, his frame had filled out from the lanky boy he'd once been. Years of ranch work had shaped him into a man of lean muscle, his face weathered by sun but still youthful beneath a light stubble. His hazel eyes studied the young woman before him. "A woman alone cannot survive out here," he said bluntly. Fire flashed in her eyes. "I have no choice but to try. There are towns eastward. You could sell the claim." "No," the word was final, brooking no argument. "I will not abandon what my father died for. I will not fail him." Mitchell recognized the stubborn pride. It mirrored his own. He moved to a shelf and retrieved jerky and hard biscuits. "Eat something. Morning comes early, and I will see you safely back to your homestead." Zara accepted the food gratefully. As the fire's glow illuminated her features, Mitchell noticed fading bruises on her wrist. She caught his gaze and quickly tugged her sleeve down. "Blackwater is not always kind to a woman alone," she said simply. Something dark and protective stirred in Mitchell's chest, an unfamiliar sensation he quickly tamped down. Attachment was dangerous. He'd learned that watching his mother waste away from heartbreak after his father's death. The West took everything eventually, caring only made the inevitable loss more painful. "You should rest," he said, nodding toward the bed. "I will keep watch." Zara glanced at the narrow cot. "And where will you sleep?" "I will manage," Mitchell replied, settling into a chair. "The storm requires attention." Reluctantly, Zara moved to the bed, but instead of lying down, she sat on its edge. "Tell me about yourself, Mr. Kearney. It seems only fair I know something of the man who saved my life." Mitchell shifted uncomfortably. "Not much to tell. I work my own spread about 10 miles north, cattle mostly." "Family?" she asked. "None living," he answered shortly. Zara nodded, understanding in her eyes. "The territory is not for the faint of heart." "No, it is not," Mitchell agreed, studying her. "Which is why you should reconsider your position. A claim is not worth your life." "It is all I have left," Zara replied softly. "Without it, I am just another orphan with nowhere to belong." She smoothed her dress, a simple blue calico that had once been fine but now showed signs of careful mending. "What do you have that makes this harsh life worthwhile, Mr. Kearney?" The question caught Mitchell off guard. What did he have? Land that demanded constant vigilance, cattle that could be stolen or lost to disease, a solitary existence justified as independence. "Freedom," he finally said. "I answer to no one." Zara's lips curved slightly. "A lonely freedom, I would imagine." Mitchell didn't respond. Outside, the wind howled its agreement, slinging dust against the cabin walls. The small space grew comfortable with shared silence, broken only by the occasional pop from the fireplace. Eventually, Zara's exhaustion won out. She laid down fully clothed on the bed, her golden hair spreading across the pillow. Mitchell watched as her breathing evened out, struck by how fragile and out of place she seemed in this brutal country. As she slept, he found himself making a silent, inexplicable vow. He would see her safely home, but more than that, he would make certain she survived this unforgiving land. Not through attachment, he told himself, but through simple human decency. A man's word was all he truly owned out here. The storm raged through the night. Mitchell remained vigilant, tending the fire and occasionally checking the horses. When dawn finally broke, the air had cleared, leaving behind a landscape transformed, drifts of dust piled against every obstacle like snow in a winter storm. Zara awoke as sunlight filtered through the single small window. For a moment, confusion clouded her features before recognition dawned. "The storm has passed?" she asked, sitting up and attempting to smooth her hair. Mitchell nodded, already packing supplies. "We should move quickly. Your wagon may be half buried, but we can retrieve whatever survived." They rode out after a simple breakfast of coffee and biscuits. The territory looked alien in the storm's aftermath, familiar landmarks obscured, new dunes formed where flat prairie had been. Mitchell navigated confidently nonetheless, reading the land as easily as others might read a book. They found Zara's wagon partially covered by drifted dust, but largely intact. Mitchell worked silently to excavate it, declining Zara's offers of help with a shake of his head. When the wagon was finally freed, he inspected the wheels and axles. "It will hold," he pronounced. "Where exactly is your homestead?" 3 miles east near Elk Creek," Zara replied, reloading her possessions. Mitchell's expression darkened. "Jenkins territory, rough country." "You know it." "I know of it," Mitchell replied carefully. "Water disputes, land arguments." Zara's expression became guarded. "The Jenkinses have made their opinions about my presence clear. They believe a woman has no right to the land." "And you stayed despite this?" "As I said, Mr. Kearney, I have nowhere else to go." Mitchell hitched Zara's horse back to the wagon and secured his own mount to the back. "I will drive you home." The journey was slow across the storm-altered terrain. As they traveled, Mitchell noted how Zara sat straight-backed beside him, her eyes constantly scanning the horizon. Not just beautiful, he thought grudgingly, but watchful. Survival required such vigilance. "How long have you been alone on your homestead?" he asked as they navigated around a new dust drift. "Since my father's passing in March," she answered. 3 months of solitude can feel like years." Mitchell knew that truth intimately. "Why not hire help?" Zara gave a small, bitter laugh. "With what, Mr. Kearney? My father spent our savings getting here. What little I had went to supplies," and she stopped abruptly. "And," Mitchell prompted, she sighed, "protection money." To be left alone, her fingers worried at a loose thread on her sleeve. It did not work as promised. Mitchell's jaw tightened. Protection rackets were common in territories where law existed only as an occasional visiting marshal. "The Jenkinses." "Their foreman, a man named Wade." She spoke the name with such quiet dread that Mitchell's protective instincts flared again. "Has he hurt you?" The question came out harsher than intended. Zara stared straight ahead. "He made threats, showed me what might happen if I continued refusing to sell." She unconsciously touched her bruised wrist. "Yesterday in Blackwater, he said it was my final warning." Mitchell absorbed this information silently, anger building beneath his stoic exterior. "You should have reported him to the marshal." "Marshal Tanner drinks with the Jenkinses every Saturday," Zara responded flatly. "He suggested I was being obstinate about the situation." They crested a small rise, and Mitchell saw the homestead in the distance. A modest cabin with a small barn and corral, nestled against a stand of cottonwoods that marked the creek line. The land was good, better than most claims in the area, with water access that explained the Jenkinses' interest. As they approached, Mitchell noticed fresh hoof prints cutting across the property. "Someone's been here while you were gone." Zara tensed beside him. "Wade," she whispered. Mitchell pulled the wagon to a stop 50 yards from the cabin. "Stay here," he instructed, retrieving his rifle from its scabbard. "Mr. Kearney," Zara began. "Mitchell," he corrected automatically. "If we are to be neighbors of sorts, you might as well use my given name." A small smile touched her lips despite her evident fear. "Mitchell, then, please be careful." He approached the cabin cautiously, noting signs of intrusion immediately, the door hanging slightly ajar, a broken window pane. Inside, destruction awaited. Furniture overturned, the small stove damaged, flour and supplies dumped across the floor. On the wall, someone had used a knife to carve a crude message. "Last chance." Mitchell surveyed the damage with cold fury. This was more than intimidation, this was a promise of violence to come. He returned to the wagon where Zara waited anxiously. "How bad?" she asked, reading his expression. "Fixable," Mitchell answered, unwilling to detail the destruction. "But you cannot stay here tonight. We need to secure the livestock and gather whatever you need." To her credit, Zara asked no further questions. She followed him to the small barn where, mercifully, her few animals, 2 milk cows, some chickens, and a pig, remained unharmed. Together they worked efficiently, Mitchell repairing the broken door hinges while Zara salvaged what she could from the cabin. As sunset approached, Mitchell made his decision. "You will stay at my ranch until this is resolved." Zara looked up from gathering her belongings, surprise evident. "I cannot impose." "It is not an imposition," Mitchell interrupted. "It is common sense. They will return, and next time they may not stop at property damage." "But my animals, my claim." "We will bring the livestock," Mitchell assured her. "As for the claim, absence does not forfeit your rights if you are making improvements." Zara studied him, her blue eyes searching. "Why would you help me? You do not know me." Mitchell struggled to articulate what drove him. It wasn't just the protective instinct she stirred or the injustice of her situation. Something about her courage in the face of overwhelming odds resonated with him. "Out here, we help when help is needed," he said finally. "Or we should." Zara seemed to accept this explanation. "Very well, but I will work for my keep, and this arrangement is temporary until I can secure proper protection for my property." Mitchell nodded, respecting her pride. "Agreed." They loaded her essential belongings and rounded up her animals before setting out. The journey to Mitchell's ranch would take several hours, forcing them to travel partly by moonlight. As they rode side by side, Mitchell felt an unfamiliar sensation, the weight of responsibility for another person. He had avoided such connections for years, convinced they were weakness in a land that demanded strength. Yet watching Zara's straight back and determined profile in the moonlight, he wondered if perhaps his understanding of strength had been incomplete. Mitchell's ranch came into view just as the moon reached its zenith, a sturdy 2-story cabin with a wide porch, flanked by a large barn and several outbuildings. Unlike many bachelor establishments, it showed care in its maintenance, with a flower garden his mother had started still thriving near the front door. "It is beautiful," Zara said softly as they approached. Mitchell felt an unexpected surge of pride. "It was my parents' dream. I have tried to honor that." Inside, the ranch house reflected both practical needs and remembered comfort. Solid furniture built to last, colorful quilts draped over chairs, bookshelves filled with volumes his mother had insisted on bringing west. Mitchell lit lamps and showed Zara to the guest room his mother had always kept ready for visitors who rarely came. "You should be comfortable here," he said, standing awkwardly in the doorway. "The washroom is down the hall." "I will see to your animals." Zara set her wooden box on the dresser, the one possession she had never let out of her sight. "Thank you, Mitchell, truly." He nodded and retreated, unused to gratitude and the emotions it stirred. Later, as they shared a simple meal of beans and salt pork, Mitchell observed Zara more carefully. Despite her evident exhaustion, her manners suggested an upbringing of refinement at odds with frontier living. "You were not always destined for homesteading," he observed. Zara looked up, surprised by his perception. "No, my father was a professor in Boston. When Mother died, he changed, became obsessed with starting fresh. The Homestead Act seemed like providence to him. And you followed him west." "He was all I had," she said simply, "and I believed in his dream of building something that was truly ours." Mitchell understood that loyalty. "And now?" Zara's gaze grew distant. "Now I understand what it costs to claim something as your own out here, but I also understand what it means to belong somewhere." Her eyes refocused on him. "Do you not feel it? This connection to the land?" Mitchell considered her question seriously. The land demands everything and promises nothing in return, yet, he struggled to find the words, there is honesty in that exchange. "No false promises." "Unlike people?" Zara asked perceptively. Mitchell found himself revealing more than he intended. "My mother never recovered after my father died. It was as if he took half of her with him. I watched her fade away, still caring for me but never truly present again." "And so you decided caring was dangerous," Zara concluded softly. Mitchell stood abruptly, uncomfortable with her insight. "It is late, we should rest." Zara didn't press further, but her quiet good night. Mitchell followed him as he retreated to his room, unsettled by how easily she had seen through defenses built over years of solitude. Morning brought routine, chores that needed doing regardless of guests or complications. Mitchell was surprised to find Zara already in the kitchen at dawn, coffee brewing and biscuits in the oven. "I told you I would earn my keep," she said, noting his expression. They fell into an unexpected rhythm over the following days. Mitchell showed Zara his operation, the cattle grazing in the north pasture, the vegetable garden that supplied much of his food, the windmill that provided consistent water. She proved herself capable and willing to learn, meeting each task with determined competence. In the evenings, they shared meals and gradually, stories. Mitchell learned of Zara's childhood in Boston, her mother's death from influenza when Zara was 16, her father's subsequent decline and fixation on Western opportunity. She learned of Mitchell's upbringing on the frontier, his father's efforts to establish their ranch, and the lonely years since his mother's passing. "Do you never get lonely here?" she asked one evening as they sat on the porch, the sunset painting the prairie in gold and crimson. Mitchell had asked himself the same question many times, usually answering with stoic acceptance. Now, with Zara's presence illuminating the emptiness he'd grown accustomed to, he found honesty easier. "Yes," he admitted. But loneliness seemed a fair price for independence. "Are the two mutually exclusive?" Zara wondered. "Must we choose between connection and freedom?" Mitchell had no answer, but the question lingered in his mind long after they had retired for the night. A week into Zara's stay, Mitchell rode into Blackwater for supplies and information. The small town consisted of little more than a general store, saloon, livery stable, and a handful of buildings that passed for civilization in the territory. He tied his horse outside the general store and entered to find the proprietor, Samuel Wilcox, arranging new inventory. "Mitchell Kearney," Sam greeted him. "Twice in a month must be a special occasion." Mitchell began listing his requirements: flour, coffee, sugar, ammunition for a Winchester, and whatever information you have about the Jenkins outfit's recent activities. Sam's eyebrows rose. "Interesting shopping list." He began gathering the requested items. "Jenkins' boys have been in town plenty, drinking heavy, talking louder. Word is they're expanding operations, looking to control more water rights. And the foreman, Wade." Sam's expression darkened. "Mean piece of work, that one. Been throwing his weight around. Roughed up Dawson's girl right in front of my store last week." Mitchell's jaw tightened. Anyone intervene? Sam looked ashamed. "Jenkins employs half the town one way or another. Nobody's looking to cross them." He leaned closer. "Heard the girl's been staying at your place, that true?" "Her property was vandalized," Mitchell replied evenly. "She needed somewhere safe." "Careful, son," Sam warned. "Jenkins won't take kindly to interference." Mitchell paid for his purchases. "I am not looking for trouble, but I will not turn away someone who needs help." As he loaded his supplies, Mitchell became aware of eyes on him. Across the street, three men lounged outside the saloon, watching his movements with predatory interest. The tallest, a man with a pockmarked face and cold eyes, spat tobacco juice in the dirt and muttered something that made his companions laugh. Wade, the description Zara had given, matched the man perfectly. Mitchell continued his task, deliberately unhurried. When he mounted his horse, Wade called out, "How's the Dawson girl enjoying your hospitality, Kearney?" The question carried crude implications. Mitchell turned slowly in his saddle. "Miss Dawson is under my protection, remember that." Wade pushed off from the hitching post. "Protection. That what they call it these days?" His hand rested casually near his holstered revolver. "Mr. Jenkins is offering fair price for that creek property. Might be safer for everyone if you convinced her to sell." "Safer for whom?" Mitchell asked coldly. Wade's smile never reached his eyes. "Message delivered. Make sure she understands what's coming if she refuses." Mitchell held the man's gaze for a long moment. "I understand perfectly what is coming if you set foot on her property again." With that, he turned his horse and rode out of town, feeling Wade's stare burning into his back. He found Zara in the garden when he returned, her sleeves rolled up as she weeded between rows of vegetables. She looked up at his approach, a smile warming her features that quickly faded when she saw his expression. "What happened?" she asked, straightening. Mitchell dismounted. "Wade in town." He related the encounter as they walked toward the house. Zara's face paled, but her voice remained steady. "They will not stop, will they?" "No," Mitchell answered honestly. Men like Jenkins and Wade understand only one thing: power. They believe they have it, you do not. And you, Zara asked. What do you believe? Mitchell considered the question as he unloaded supplies. I believe in defending what is right. Your claim is legally filed. The intimidation is illegal. Yet the law does nothing, Zara noted bitterly. Then we must be prepared to defend ourselves, Mitchell replied. Inside the house, he unwrapped a package containing a small revolver. Can you shoot? Zara looked at the weapon with trepidation. My father taught me with his hunting rifle. For protection, he said. This is smaller, easier to handle, Mitchell explained. I will teach you properly tomorrow. That night, a thunderstorm rolled across the plains, bringing much-needed rain after the dust storm's devastation. Mitchell sat at the kitchen table cleaning his rifle when Zara appeared in the doorway, her nightgown and robe modest but still a reminder of their unusual living arrangement. I could not sleep, she explained, moving to put water on for tea. The storm. A tremendous crash of thunder punctuated her words, making her jump slightly. Mitchell pretended not to notice her nervousness. Good for the land, he commented. Settles the dust, brings growth. Zara nodded, preparing tea with practiced movements. My father used to say storms were nature's way of reminding us who truly held power. She brought 2 cups to the table, sliding one toward Mitchell. May I ask you something? Mitchell set aside his rifle, of course. Why did you really stop to help me that day? Her blue eyes were direct, searching his face. You said anyone would have, but we both know that is not true. You could have ridden past. The question demanded honesty Mitchell rarely offered. I do not know, he admitted. Something about seeing you fight so hard against impossible odds, it seemed. Wrong to leave you to face it alone. Zara's expression softened. My father would have called that providence. And you, what do you call it? Human decency, she replied. Rarer than gold out here, and therefore more precious. Another thunderclap shook the house, closer this time. Zara flinched involuntarily. The storm frightens you, Mitchell observed. Not the storm itself, Zara confessed. But being alone during one, it reminds me of the night my father died. The thunder, the solitude, the helplessness. Without thinking, Mitchell reached across the table and covered her hand with his. The touch was electric, simple human connection he had denied himself for so long. You are not alone tonight, he said quietly. Their eyes met, and in that moment something shifted between them, an acknowledgement of connection neither had expected to find. Mitchell withdrew his hand first, uncomfortable with the unfamiliar warmth spreading through his chest. We should rest, he said. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges. Zara nodded but lingered at the table. Thank you, Mitchell, not just for the shelter or protection, but for seeing me as capable rather than helpless. You are one of the strongest people I have met, Mitchell replied truthfully. Stronger than most men I know. Her smile illuminated the room brighter than the lightning outside. Good night, Mitchell. Good night, Zara. The next morning dawned clear and fresh, the storm having cleansed the air of lingering dust. After breakfast, Mitchell took Zara to a small clearing behind the barn to teach her proper handling of the revolver. She proved a quick study, her determination compensating for her initial nervousness. Remember, Mitchell instructed as she aimed at a row of bottles he had set up, steady your breathing before you fire. One smooth motion. Zara squeezed the trigger, the report cracking across the quiet morning. The center bottle shattered. Well done, Mitchell praised, genuinely impressed. Zara lowered the gun, a small smile of satisfaction on her lips. It feels strange to find pride in destruction. Not destruction, Mitchell corrected. Protection. There is a difference. Their lesson was interrupted by the distant sound of approaching horses. Mitchell immediately moved to place himself between Zara and the potential threat, his rifle ready as 4 riders appeared on the horizon. Inside the house, he instructed, take the revolver. I will not hide while you face danger on my behalf, Zara protested. Mitchell recognized the riders now, Wade and 3 Jenkins ranch hands. This is not open for discussion, please, Zara. Something in his tone must have convinced her. She retreated to the house, but Mitchell noticed she positioned herself on the porch rather than fully inside, close enough for the revolver to be useful if needed. Wade led his men into the yard, their horses' hooves stirring up mud from the previous night's rain. He surveyed the property with contemptuous familiarity before his gaze settled on Mitchell. "Neighborly visit, Kearney," Wade called. "Thought we should talk about that misunderstanding in town." "Nothing to misunderstand," Mitchell replied evenly. "Miss Dawson's property is not for sale. You and your employer need to accept that." Wade's eyes drifted to where Zara stood on the porch. "The lady can speak for herself, can't she?" His smile was ugly. "Unless you found ways to keep her mouth otherwise occupied." One of his companions sniggered. Mitchell's finger tightened imperceptibly on his rifle's trigger. "State your business and leave," Mitchell said coldly. "You are not welcome here." Wade's expression hardened. "Business is simple. Jenkins wants that creek property. Girl's been offered fair price. Time's up for playing hard to get." He leaned forward in his saddle. "She sells or accidents start happening. Bad ones." Zara's voice rang out clear and firm from the porch. "The property is not for sale at any price, Mr. Wade. Please inform Mr. Jenkins." Wade's face darkened with anger. "You're making a mistake, girl. Nobody says no to Harlan Jenkins in this territory." "She just did," Mitchell pointed out, "and now you have trespassed and made threats against both of us. I would suggest you leave, while that is the extent of your crimes today." For a tense moment, Mitchell thought Wade might draw. The man's hand hovered near his holster as calculation played across his features. "You've chosen the wrong side, Kearney," Wade finally said. "Jenkins won't forget it." "Neither will I," Mitchell responded. "Now get off my land." Wade spat contemptuously before wheeling his horse around. His parting words carried clearly, "We'll be seeing you both real soon." Mitchell remained standing, rifle ready, until the riders disappeared beyond the ridge. Only then did he lower his weapon and turn toward the house. Zara descended the porch steps, her face pale but composed. "They will be back." "Yes," Mitchell agreed, "with more men next time." "This is my fight," Zara said firmly. "I cannot allow you to be drawn further into it." Mitchell shook his head. "It became my fight when Wade made it one." He looked across his land, considering options. "We should visit your homestead tomorrow. See what condition it is in, collect anything important you left behind." Zara studied him, confusion evident. "You still believe I can return there after this?" "I believe you should have the choice," Mitchell answered. "Your claim, your decision. But whatever you choose, you are not facing this alone anymore." That promise hung between them, weighted with implications neither was ready to fully examine. The following day they rode to Zara's homestead, alert for any sign of Jenkins' men. The property appeared undisturbed since their last visit, though Zara gasped at seeing the vandalism in daylight for the first time. The crude threat carved into the wall seemed more menacing in the bright morning sun. They worked efficiently, Mitchell repairing the broken door and window while Zara gathered important documents and personal items. As she sorted through her father's desk, she suddenly went still, clutching a folded paper. "Mitchell," she called, her voice strained, "I think you should see this." He crossed to her side, taking the document she extended. It was a letter from the land office dated 2 months earlier, acknowledging a boundary dispute filed by Harlan Jenkins, claiming the creek as part of his original grant. "My father never mentioned this," Zara said. "He must have been protecting me from worry." Mitchell read the letter carefully. "This changes nothing legally. Your claim was properly filed and approved. Jenkins is fishing for technicalities." "But it explains his determination," Zara noted. "The creek is his true objective." Mitchell nodded. "Water rights are worth more than gold out here, but this," he tapped the letter, "shows he tried legal channels first and failed. It strengthens your position." As they continued working, Mitchell noticed Zara's wooden box sitting open on the table. Inside lay a collection of letters tied with ribbon, a small daguerreotype of a woman who shared Zara's features, and a tarnished silver locket. Zara followed his gaze. "My mother," she explained, indicating the image. "The letters are correspondence between my parents during their courtship. The locket contains locks of hair from both of them." She closed the box gently. "All that remains of my family." Mitchell understood the value of such connections more acutely than he once had. "We should take everything that cannot be replaced." They loaded the wagon with Zara's remaining possessions. both aware that this might be her final visit to the homestead her father had claimed with such hope. As they prepared to depart, Mitchell studied the small cabin with its surrounding plot, good land with promise now shadowed by threat. It could have been a fine home, he said quietly. Zara stood beside him, sorrow and determination mingled in her expression. It still could be. The ride back to Mitchell's ranch passed in contemplative silence. Each was lost in thought about what the escalating conflict might require of them. When they crested the final rise and Mitchell's property came into view, he felt a strange sensation, as though seeing his home through new eyes. No longer just shelter but sanctuary, not merely a claim but a future. "What will you do if they come in force?" Zara asked suddenly. Mitchell considered his answer carefully. "Defend what matters." "Your land." That Mitchell acknowledged. And more. The weeks that followed settled into an uneasy vigilance. Mitchell taught Zara everything he knew about ranch operations, not just as precaution, but because she proved eager to learn and capable with every task. Together they mended fences, tended cattle, preserved garden vegetables for the coming winter. Each evening brought conversation that gradually revealed more of themselves. Mitchell learned of Zara's dreams before tragedy altered her path: university education, perhaps teaching like her father. Zara discovered Mitchell's hidden interests: the books of poetry he kept by his bedside, his skill with wood carving, his knowledge of stars acquired during lonely night watches with the herd. "You are not what you first appeared," Zara observed one evening as they sat on the porch, watching fireflies rise from the grass. "And what did I appear to be?" Mitchell asked. "A solitary figure by choice," she replied thoughtfully. "A man who preferred his own company to all others." Mitchell gazed out at the darkening land. That was true enough. Was, Zara questioned softly. Mitchell found himself at a crossroads of admission. "I am discovering there are companions worth the risk of attachment." The words hung between them, honest and vulnerable. Zara's hand found his in the gathering darkness, her fingers intertwining with his. "I am glad you stopped that day," she whispered, "even with everything that has followed." Mitchell turned to her, moonlight illuminating her features. No longer a stranger in need, but a woman who had somehow carved a place in his carefully guarded heart. Without conscious thought, he leaned toward her, drawn by forces stronger than his long-held convictions. Their kiss was gentle, tentative, a question rather than a demand. When they parted, Mitchell saw his own wonder reflected in Zara's eyes. "I did not come here seeking this," she said softly. "Nor did I expect to find it," Mitchell admitted, "but here we are." Their newfound connection blossomed cautiously in the days that followed. Hands touching while working side by side, stolen kisses between chores, conversations that stretched long into the evening. Mitchell found himself laughing more than he had in years, while Zara's confidence grew visibly as she mastered each new ranch skill. "You belong here," Mitchell told her one afternoon as they worked together in the garden. "As if you have always been part of this place." Zara looked up, soil smudged across one cheek. "It feels that way sometimes, like I was meant to find my way here." The moment of peace shattered 3 days later when Samuel Wilcox arrived from Blackwater, his horse lathered from hard riding. "Mitchell," he called, dismounting in the yard, "got word you needed to hear immediately." Mitchell emerged from the barn, Zara following close behind. "Jenkins has hired guns," Sam reported grimly. 4 men arrived on yesterday's stage, professional troublemakers from Wyoming territory. Word is they're moving on the Dawson property tomorrow to secure it for Jenkins. Mitchell's expression hardened. "Appreciate the warning, Sam." "There's more," Sam continued. "Marshal Tanner conveniently left for Fort Collins yesterday, won't be back for a week." Zara stepped forward. "They plan to take my land while there's no law to stop them." Sam nodded uncomfortably. "Jenkins is calling it abandoned property now, says since you haven't been living there, the claim is forfeit." "That is not how the law works," Zara protested. "Law's whatever the strongest man says it is out here sometimes," Sam replied apologetically. "Just thought you should know what's coming." After Sam departed, Mitchell and Zara faced each other in the yard, the weight of decision upon them. "I must return to my homestead," Zara said firmly. "I cannot allow them to simply take what is legally mine." Mitchell shook his head. "They're not coming to negotiate, Zara." Hired guns have one purpose. Then what would you have me do? She demanded. Abandon everything my father worked for, everything I have endured these months to protect. Mitchell took her hands in his. I would have you live. Land can be replaced. You cannot. Zara's eyes flashed. My life is tied to that claim. It is all I have left. No, Mitchell said quietly, it is not all you have. The simple statement hung between them, profound in its implication. Zara's expression softened as understanding dawned. Mitchell. He continued before courage failed him. When I found you in that dust storm, I believed I was simply doing what any decent man would do, but now I see it differently. That day changed everything, for both of us, I think. Yes, Zara acknowledged softly, it did. Mitchell drew a deep breath. I have a proposal, not born of this crisis, though perhaps hastened by it. Zara's eyes widened as Mitchell knelt before her, still holding her hands. Zara Dawson, I have lived alone believing it was strength. You have shown me it was fear instead. I cannot promise a perfect life, but I can promise to face whatever comes beside you, not as protector but as partner. His voice grew steadier as he continued. Will you marry me? Join your claim to mine, your life to mine. Tears glistened in Zara's eyes. Are you certain? This is not merely to resolve our current situation. Mitchell smiled. The situation only revealed what I believe was already written for us. I love you, Zara, an unexpected truth I can no longer deny. Yes, she whispered, pulling him to his feet. Yes, Mitchell. I will marry you. Their embrace sealed the promise, but reality quickly reasserted itself. Jenkins will still come for the creek property, Zara noted pragmatically. Mitchell nodded. Yes. But now we face him together, with strategy rather than desperation. That evening they formulated their plan, not to confront Jenkins' hired guns directly, but to outmaneuver them legally and publicly. At dawn, they rode not to Zara's homestead but to Blackwater, where the circuit preacher was scheduled to arrive for his monthly visit. Reverend Hopkins, a weathered man who had served frontier communities for 30 years, listened to their situation with grave attention. Marriage is not to be entered lightly, he cautioned. Especially not as strategy against threats. The timing is influenced by circumstances, Mitchell acknowledged, but the commitment is genuine. The Reverend studied them both carefully before nodding. Very well. I'll perform the ceremony immediately. Word spread quickly through the small town. By the time they stood before Reverend Hopkins in the small church, a dozen witnesses had gathered. Sam Wilcox, his wife, the blacksmith and his family, even the saloon keeper who closed his establishment out of respect for the occasion. The ceremony was simple but profound. Mitchell, in his best shirt and polished boots, watched Zara approach wearing her mother's blue dress, wildflowers gathered that morning serving as her bouquet. Her golden hair was arranged simply but elegantly, framing a face radiant with both trepidation and joy. Dearly beloved, the Reverend began, his voice carrying easily through the small church. The traditional words took on new meaning as Mitchell repeated his vows, promises of protection and fidelity that transcended their immediate circumstances to encompass a future neither had imagined possible weeks earlier. When they were pronounced husband and wife, Mitchell kissed Zara with reverence and promise. The small congregation erupted in applause, a rare celebration in a land where hardship more commonly united people than joy. Their next stop was the land office, where Mitchell filed amended documents combining their properties into a single homestead claim under joint ownership. The clerk, impressed by their marriage certificate still warm from signing, processed the paperwork immediately. Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Kearney, he said, stamping the final document. Your combined claim is now officially recorded. Outside, Mitchell helped Zara mount her horse. Now we return home, he said, to our land. Zara's smile combined determination and newfound hope. Our land, she repeated, the words a declaration. They approached Zara's homestead cautiously, aware that Jenkins' men might already be there. From the ridge overlooking the property, they spotted 5 horses tied outside the cabin. Right on schedule, Mitchell noted grimly. Ready. Zara straightened in her saddle. Yes. They rode openly toward the cabin, Mitchell carrying both their marriage certificate and the newly filed land documents. Wade emerged first, hand resting on his holstered pistol, followed by four hard-faced strangers. "Well, look who's decided to visit," Wade called mockingly. "Little late, missy. This property's been declared abandoned." Mitchell dismounted calmly, helping Zara down beside him. "That would be incorrect, Wade. This property has never been abandoned. It simply became part of a larger homestead through legal means." Wade's eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" Mitchell extended the documents. "Miss Dawson is now Mrs. Kearney. Our properties are legally combined as of this morning. One homestead, one claim, continuously occupied." The hired guns exchanged uncertain glances as Wade snatched the papers, reading them with growing anger. "This is a trick," he snarled. "Jenkins won't accept." "Jenkins has no say in the matter," Mitchell interrupted. "The law does, and the law is clear. You're trespassing on our property." The standoff stretched taut as Wade considered his options. The hired guns, sensing the situation had changed, seemed less eager for confrontation. "Jenkins paid us to secure abandoned property," one of them noted. "This ain't that anymore." Wade's face contorted with fury. "You yellow-bellied." "Think carefully, Wade," Mitchell advised. "Your employer sent you to bend the law, not break it outright. Attacking legally married homesteaders with proper documentation, that's beyond frontier justice. That's murder." The moment balanced on a knife's edge. Mitchell kept his posture relaxed but remained alert for any sudden movement. Finally, Wade spat in the dirt. "This ain't over. Jenkins won't stand for it." "He doesn't have to stand for it," Mitchell replied evenly. "He just has to accept it, same as you." Wade signaled his men toward their horses. "You've made an enemy today, Kearney, both of you." "No," Mitchell corrected. "I've defended what's mine. There's a difference." They watched as Wade and his men rode away, tension slowly ebbing as the riders disappeared over the ridge. "That was too easy," Zara observed, still vigilant. Mitchell nodded. "They'll return to Jenkins for new orders. We've won time, not the war." Together they surveyed the cabin. The hired guns had begun securing the property by removing Zara's remaining possessions, piling them outside for burning. Mitchell and Zara worked together to restore order, returning furniture to its proper place, salvaging what they could. "We should stay here tonight," Mitchell decided. "Show continuous occupation." Zara looked around the small cabin, scene of both her father's dreams and his death, now transformed into something new by their marriage. "Our first night as husband and wife," she said softly. "Not quite what most brides expect." Mitchell pulled her gently into his arms. "Nothing about our beginning has been conventional." "Why start now?" Their kiss deepened with new awareness, no longer tentative exploration but the promise of full commitment. When they separated, both breathless, Zara's eyes held both desire and practical concern. "Jenkins will not simply concede," she reminded him. "No," Mitchell agreed, "but neither will we." The confrontation with Jenkins himself came 3 days later. Mitchell and Zara had divided their time between both properties, establishing clear continuous occupation while moving Zara's remaining possessions to Mitchell's ranch house, their home now. They were repairing the corral at Zara's homestead when a cloud of dust announced approaching riders. Mitchell counted 7 men, Jenkins himself leading them, with Wade riding sullenly at his side. "Inside," Mitchell directed Zara. "Get the rifle." Jenkins was a large man whose prosperity showed in his expensive clothing and well-fed frame. He reined his horse to a stop and surveyed the property with proprietary eyes before focusing on Mitchell. "Kearney," he acknowledged coldly, "heard you've been busy at the land office." Mitchell stood his ground. "Mr. Jenkins, this is private property." Jenkins dismounted heavily, his boots raising puffs of dust. "That's the matter at hand, isn't it?" "Whose property?" His gaze shifted to where Zara had appeared in the doorway, rifle ready but not aimed. "Miss Dawson, or Mrs. Kearney now, I understand. Convenient timing." "Nothing convenient about it," Mitchell replied. "Just 2 people protecting what's rightfully theirs." Jenkins pulled a cigar from his vest pocket, taking his time lighting it. "Let's speak plainly. I need this water, my operation's expanding. I'm prepared to offer you 5 times what this scrap of land is worth." "It's not for sale," Zara stated firmly from the doorway. Jenkins puffed his cigar contemplatively. "Everyone has a price, name yours." Mitchell shook his head. This isn't about money, this is our home. Homes can be rebuilt, Jenkins countered. Elsewhere, with the money I'm offering, you could have twice the land in more peaceful surroundings. The implication hung heavily in the air. Mitchell met Jenkins' gaze steadily. Threats won't change our position. Jenkins sighed theatrically. Not threats, reality. This territory's growing, laws coming, railroads coming, men like me shape that future. He gestured expansively. You can be part of it or crushed beneath it. Zara stepped forward to stand beside Mitchell. My father died for this land. I won't dishonor his memory by surrendering it to intimidation. And I won't watch my wife harassed for what is legally hers, Mitchell added. The answer is no, Mr. Jenkins. Today and tomorrow. Jenkins studied them both, calculation replacing negotiation in his expression. Wade says you're newly married, expecting a family soon, perhaps. The question carried unmistakable menace. Mitchell's hand moved imperceptibly closer to his holstered revolver. That would be our business. Family changes a man's thinking, Jenkins continued. Makes him consider risks differently, safety becomes paramount. Are you threatening our future children? Zara asked incredulously. Jenkins shrugged. Just observing how priorities shift, accidents happen, especially to the vulnerable. The line had been crossed. Mitchell's voice dropped dangerously. You've made threats against my wife and now our unborn children. That's not business, Jenkins. That's something I cannot allow to stand. Jenkins' men tensed, hands hovering near weapons. The confrontation teetered on the edge of violence. Mr. Jenkins, the shout came from the ridge as a rider approached at speed. It was the telegrapher from Blackwater. Urgent wire for you, sir. Jenkins raised his hand, halting his men's movements as the messenger handed him a yellow telegram. His expression darkened as he read. Problem? Wade asked. Jenkins crushed the paper in his fist. Change of plans, we're returning to the ranch. He turned to Mitchell and Zara. This matter is postponed, not concluded. As quickly as they had arrived, Jenkins and his men departed, leaving Mitchell and Zara in confused relief. What just happened? Zara wondered. Mitchell shook his head. I don't know, but I intend to find out. The answer came the following day when Samuel Wilcox rode out to their ranch, his face alight with news. Federal Marshal, he announced triumphantly. Arrived yesterday with warrants for Jenkins. Seems his expansion plans caught attention in Washington. Questions about how he acquired certain properties, intimidation of homesteaders. The telegram, Mitchell realized. Someone warned him. Sam nodded. He's holed up at his ranch now. Marshall's gathering a proper posse before serving the warrants. He grinned. Couldn't happen to a more deserving fellow. The news spread quickly throughout the territory. Within days, Jenkins' operation began disintegrating as hired hands abandoned the sinking ship. Wade disappeared entirely, reportedly heading for Wyoming territory ahead of his own warrant. 2 weeks later, Mitchell and Zara stood together on their porch, watching the sunset paint the horizon in gold and crimson. Jenkins had surrendered to federal authorities rather than risk violent confrontation. His extensive properties would be sold at auction, his influence in the territory erased. It seems almost unreal, Zara mused, leaning against Mitchell's shoulder. After months of fear, to have it end so. Completely. Mitchell's arm tightened around her waist. Justice finds its way eventually. Even out here, Zara asked, a smile in her voice. Especially out here, Mitchell affirmed. Where every action carries weight. They stood in companionable silence, watching darkness gather across land that was truly theirs now, not just by legal claim, but by the courage they had shown in defending it. I have something to tell you, Zara said finally, turning in Mitchell's embrace to face him. Something I've suspected for a few weeks now. Mitchell studied her face, noting the subtle glow that had nothing to do with the sunset. You're with child, he guessed softly. Zara's eyes widened. How did you know? I've watched my mother, my aunts, neighboring women, Mitchell explained. The signs are familiar. His hand moved gently to rest against her still flat stomach. Our child. Are you pleased? Zara asked, vulnerability in her question. Mitchell's answer was to lift her into his arms, spinning her in a circle of pure joy. Pleased doesn't begin to describe it, he said when he finally set her down. From the moment I found you in that dust storm, my life has been transformed. Now we build a future I never dared imagine." "For all three of us," Zara agreed, her hand covering his where it still rested protectively over their unborn child. As darkness settled fully across the land, they remained on the porch, planning and dreaming. The homestead would need expansion, a larger house for their growing family, additional pasture for increasing herds. The work would be hard, the challenges constant, but they would face them together. Mitchell reflected on the silent vow he had made that first night, to see Zara safely home. He hadn't understood then that home wasn't a place but a promise fulfilled, not a destination but a journey shared. "What are you thinking?" Zara asked, noting his contemplative expression. Mitchell smiled, drawing her closer. "That sometimes the most important promises are the ones we make without words." "Like the one you made when you found me in the dust storm?" Zara asked perceptively. "Yes," Mitchell admitted, though I didn't recognize it as such at the time. Zara rose on tiptoe to kiss him gently. Some promises need no words to bind them. They're written in actions, in choices, in the courage to open one's heart. Mitchell looked out over their land, no longer his alone, but theirs together. The territory remained harsh, the future uncertain in many ways. But the fundamental truth he had resisted for so long now seemed self-evident. Strength came not from isolation, but from connection, not from independence alone, but from the courage to depend on another. "I love you, Zara Kearney," he said, the words simple but profound. "And I love you, Mitchell Kearney," she replied, "today and all our tomorrows." Above them, stars emerged in the vast western sky, constant, enduring, bearing witness to promises kept, and a future unfolding across the frontier that had tested them both and found them worthy of its rewards.